The young and the restless spoilers at the quiet Newman ranch. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as Nick poured himself a second cup of coffee while Nikki silently skimmed through the morning news on her tablet. The hum of a typical morning was soon disrupted by the sound of approaching heels echoing through the hallway, and Victoria entered the room, her face composed but clouded with a weight neither Nick nor Nikki missed. Nikki set down the tablet and greeted her daughter warmly, immediately sensing the emotional storm she carried. Victoria brushed off the greeting with a half-smile and sat across from them, her fingers nervously tapping the edge of her cup. When Nikki asked about Cole Howard, Victoria's reply was firm but somber, "Nothing's changed." Her voice was steady, but there was a quiver beneath it that betrayed the strength she was trying to maintain. She went on to explain how helpless she felt watching Cole suffer in silence, weighed down by something he refused to discuss openly, haunted by regrets and uncertainty about the future. Nikki, ever the calming matriarch, assured her that things would eventually settle, but Victoria's gaze grew more distant as she admitted that fear was now her constant companion, not for herself, but for the man she once loved so deeply and never truly stopped caring for. The conversation then drifted toward something darker, something far less intimate but equally disturbing, the party being planned by Aristotle Dumas in the south of France. Victoria confessed that she had done her best to avoid the subject in the corporate boardroom, but she had been receiving rumors and hints from various sources, whispers about secret meetings, potential takeovers, and a strategic move involving Chancellor Industries. What concerned her most was how smoothly Dumas had inserted himself into Genoa City's financial sphere, almost like a phantom slipping through cracks no one had thought to seal. Nikki was skeptical, still holding on to the belief that Victor's tight grip on Newman Enterprises could withstand any outsider's ambition, but Nick was more pragmatic. He had seen the look in Dumas' eyes at the last business event, the quiet but calculated way he had engaged with the Newmans, masking interest with indifference, but always listening, always calculating. Victoria revealed her plan to stay behind rather than attend the lavish party, believing it would be wiser to maintain a watchful eye over the company and to be close to Cole should he finally reach a breaking point. She even admitted that a part of her still longed to attend. Not for the luxury or spectacle, but because it might provide insight into what Dumas was really planning. "It feels like a trap," she said, her voice low. "Like something out of an Agatha Christie novel, where the killer is always in the room, smiling at you as they pour the wine." Elsewhere in Genoa City, Billy Abbott leaned against the marble counter of society, swirling a drink in his hand as he listened intently to Sally Spectra. The pair had recently become an unlikely team, drawn together by mutual interest and a shared curiosity about the elusive invitation list for Dumas' European gathering. Sally, ever the social climber with a sharp instinct for the undercurrents of power, had discovered through her connections that Phyllis Summers had somehow secured an invitation. Billy raised an eyebrow, surprised. Phyllis was rarely left out of anything controversial or glamorous, but her involvement in the Dumas event stirred more than just professional jealousy. It triggered a new round of speculation. Why her? What could she possibly offer a man like Aristotle Dumas? Sally proposed a theory that Phyllis, with her tech background and past experience hacking into security networks, might have been recruited or even bribed into some covert operation. Billy wasn't ready to go that far, but he admitted that if there was something secretive going on, Phyllis would not only know about it, she'd be knee-deep in it. They agreed to dig deeper, not just for the sake of curiosity, but to protect the people they cared about. The last thing anyone needed was for a hostile corporate maneuver to blindside the Newmans or disrupt the already fragile dynamics in Genoa City. Meanwhile, in a much more subdued corner of town, Tessa Porter sat cross-legged on the plush rug in her living room, guitar resting across her lap, as she stared blankly at the lyric sheet in front of her. Music used to come easily, melodies, harmonies, emotional chords that connected every part of her, but lately, inspiration had become a stranger. Mariah's sleepless nights, the emotional distance, and the unspoken tension had drained her creativity. Enter Daniel Romalotti Jr. an old friend who had come by under the pretense of helping her tune her guitar but who clearly sensed the deeper reason she needed company. As they talked, Daniel gently guided the conversation toward her art, asking the kind of questions that forced Tessa to confront the feelings she had been suppressing for weeks. She admitted that she was scared, not just about her relationship, but about losing herself in the process of trying to hold everything together. Daniel reminded her that sometimes the best songs come from pain, and while that didn't make the suffering easier, it gave it meaning. Tessa looked at him, eyes misty, and for the first time in weeks, let herself cry, not out of weakness, but from the relief of finally being honest. He helped her reshape the lyrics into something more personal, more raw, and as her fingers strummed a familiar minor chord, something opened inside her again. The silence that had plagued her creativity cracked just enough for a single note to escape, and that was all she needed to begin again. Back at the Newman ranch, the discussion had taken on a more strategic tone. Nikki wondered aloud whether it was time to contact Victor, but Victoria argued that alerting him too early might only provoke him to act rashly. They needed more information, solid intel, and perhaps someone embedded within Dumas' circle who could report back discreetly. Nick offered to attend the party in France on behalf of the family, under the guise of charming diplomacy. His presence might go unnoticed amidst the glamorous crowd, giving him the freedom to observe and investigate. Victoria was hesitant, she didn't want to risk her brother's safety, but Nick was resolute. He had watched too many threats come and go, and this one felt different. Dumas wasn't just a business opportunist. He was playing a long game, one that involved charm, deception, and deep pockets. Nikki finally relented, trusting Nick's instincts. Plans were set into motion for him to travel under the radar, while Victoria remained the eyes and ears on the ground in Genoa City. As the day waned, the emotional weight of all that had been shared lingered heavily in each heart. Victoria stood by the window, staring out across the vast estate, her thoughts torn between duty and love, fear and hope. She wished, more than anything, that she and Cole could escape it all, retreat to a place untouched by legacy, loss, or expectation. But that wasn't their reality. In Genoa City, nothing stayed buried for long. Secrets resurfaced, alliances fractured, and power always demanded a price. Elsewhere, Phyllis, alone in her suite, examined the sleek silver invitation she had received days ago. Her expression unreadable, she placed the envelope in her purse and opened her laptop. There were files to review, people to research, and plans to finalize. She knew the Dumas party would be more than cocktails and conversation, it would be a battlefield. And she intended to be prepared. By midnight, the chessboard of Genoa City had already shifted. Tessa played the last note of her new song, Eyes Closed, knowing it wasn't just about music, it was about survival. Billy and Sally sat in the darkened office of Chancellor Winters, reviewing files that shouldn't exist. And at the ranch, Nikki lit a candle, not out of tradition, but as a silent prayer for the storm she sensed on the horizon. As the winds picked up outside and shadows lengthened across the grounds, it became clear that the story was only beginning. And in true Newman fashion, no one was backing down. The morning fog still lingered above the trimmed hedges of Chancellor Park, casting a gray softness over the trails as Tessa Porter sat on a wooden bench, her guitar case unopened beside her, more a prop than a purpose. Her eyes darted across the park, waiting, perhaps searching for some sense of clarity or comfort. The moment Daniel arrived, casually dressed, carrying 2 cups of coffee, she managed a strained smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. After the small talk faded, she opened up. Slowly at first, then with a growing sense of urgency that surprised even her. She confessed that Mariah had grown quiet, not in the routine way of couples who fall into familiarity, but in a deeper, more disquieting silence that signaled internal unrest. "She barely talks to me anymore," Tessa admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've asked her what's bothering her. Begged her to tell me what's going on. But nothing." Her fingers knotted together tightly as she fought the rising tide of helplessness. Daniel, ever the steady presence, offered his perspective, not answers, but space. He assured her that she wasn't alone, and gently proposed that maybe Mariah was navigating something she wasn't ready to vocalize, that some wounds fester in private before they can be named. Tessa nodded, but her heart remained heavy. She knew something was happening, something just beneath the surface that threatened to rupture everything they'd built. She just didn't know how to reach her. Back at the Grand Phoenix, Billy Abbott leaned over the marble counter in the lobby of the GCAC, checking his messages and sipping espresso, when Sally Spectra emerged from the elevator, her red hair catching the light like fire. Their conversation was casual at first, a shared moment between two people who had seen too much, wanted more, and yet always found themselves pulled back into the chaos of Genoa City. But their meeting was cut short by a call Billy couldn't ignore. Tracy's name flashed on his screen and he excused himself with an apology that barely covered the disappointment in his eyes. As he disappeared around the corner, Phyllis Summers descended the grand staircase with the grace of someone who knew every eye could be watching. Her heels clicked with authority, and the moment she locked eyes with Sally, the air thickened with electricity. Sally didn't flinch. "Hello," she said coolly, as if they were just two women exchanging pleasantries. But Phyllis had never been one for small talk. "You're not very good at watching your back, are you?" she said, lips curled into a smile that held no warmth. Sally fired back, unbothered, claiming she wasn't afraid of her. Phyllis, ever the provocateur, leaned in and with a voice laced with venom, sneered that every man Sally had slept with in this town eventually learned she was a bad investment. "Who's your next benefactor, Sally?" she added, twisting the knife. Just then, Billy returned, breaking the tension like a gust of wind through smoke. He saw the strain in Sally's expression but said nothing, only gestured for them to sit. As they slid into a booth, Sally's resolve stiffened. When he asked if she'd still go to France with him, her answer was firm, yes. It wasn't just about the party anymore, it was about being seen, being taken seriously, and maybe, just maybe, uncovering the secrets that people like Phyllis tried so hard to keep buried. Unbeknownst to them, Phyllis was about to make a move of her own. Her phone buzzed with a message from Amanda Sinclair, a short and efficient call confirming what Phyllis had suspected but hadn't dared to hope. She had been officially added to the guest list for Dumas' elusive gathering. She couldn't hide her satisfaction as she turned, intentionally loud enough for Billy and Sally to overhear, and declared her triumph. "Guess who's going to the Dumas party?" she cooed, as if dangling a golden ticket. Billy and Sally exchanged a glance. Half irritation, half disbelief. Phyllis played coy, pretending she didn't notice them inching closer until she turned to face them fully, basking in the attention. She went on to brag about the exclusivity of the event, how few from Genoa City had made the cut, and what an honor it was to be invited. But the smugness on her face faltered when Billy leaned in and calmly said, "We'll see you there." Her smirk twitched, just for a second, but she recovered quickly, pivoting the conversation toward Daniel who had just arrived, offering him a quick nod before disappearing with him through the revolving doors. As they left, the tension lingered like perfume in the air. "Phyllis? Invited by Dumas?" Sally asked incredulously, her voice edged with suspicion. "What the hell is he playing at?" Billy shrugged, but his eyes were thoughtful. "Whatever it is, we're going to find out." Then he turned to her, more serious now. "You sure you still want to go?" Sally didn't hesitate. "Not a chance in hell I'm backing out now." The layers were beginning to pile up. Tessa walked home later that evening, still reeling from her conversation with Daniel. She had started writing again, scribbling lyrics into her phone with the desperate energy of someone afraid the inspiration would vanish. Every word was about longing, about fear, about loving someone who might be slipping away. In another corner of Genoa City, Mariah sat on the floor of Sharon's living room, her hands buried in her lap, unable to confess the secret that had been poisoning her from the inside out. Sharon had tried to coax it out of her, to no avail. Whatever it wasn't simple. It wasn't a one-night stand. It was something worse. Something that made her afraid Tessa would never look at her the same way again. At the same time, Amanda hung up the phone and stared out the window of her office, wondering if she had just made a terrible mistake by involving Phyllis in something so delicate. She had been pressured, by whom, she wouldn't say, but the inclusion of Phyllis was not an accident. Aristotle Dumas had insisted. And Dumas didn't insist on anything unless it served a very precise purpose. Later that night, at society, Billy and Sally nursed drinks under the dim lights, their voices low as they tried to piece together a theory that made sense. The more they talked, the more it seemed like Phyllis had been looped in not as a guest, but as a pawn. Or worse, a distraction. What if her invitation was designed to mislead everyone else about Dumas' real intentions? What if, while everyone was watching her, someone else, someone unnoticed, was executing the real plan? Back at the GCAC, Phyllis lay on her bed, the silver-embossed invitation card still clutched in her hand. Her eyes studied every detail, every ornate swirl of ink, as if it might reveal the truth she hadn't yet figured out. She wasn't naive. She knew Dumas didn't invite her out of sentiment or admiration. She knew she was being used for something. But the question was, what did he think she was worth? And was she willing to play the part long enough to flip the script? As the pieces shifted across the Genoa city board, it was becoming harder to tell the players from the pawns. Tessa clung to hope through music, Billy and Sally prepared for a confrontation that could redefine their reputations, Victoria stayed back to guard her family's empire, and Phyllis, unpredictable as ever, positioned herself at the center of a game that no one yet fully understood. And somewhere in the shadows, Aristotle Dumas watched them all, waiting for the moment the curtain would rise and the real performance would begin.